20.
Okay, the recording has started. So, welcome everyone to our weekly episode of BetTALker. Today we have Stefan, a good old friend of us, and we would like for you to tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you end up working in safer gambling?
Oh, how did I end up? Do you know what? I think, and it's probably the same for a lot of people. I actually started off in customer service, a good 8 years ago, and I worked for a local company, right when responsible gaming at the time it was in its infancy. And do you know what? I just enjoyed it. I enjoyed it quite a lot. Just getting that chance to actually talk to people on a different level. Then from there, they offered me the role of a specialist in responsible gaming. Um, Gave me access to sort of behind the scenes, looking at operational management, and I just fell in love with it. The one good thing about being on a frontline worker is you actually get to have those conversations and talk to people. But when you work in behind the scenes and on the operations, every decision that you make impacts every single customer at the same time. And I just thought, what a difference that you can make. And from then on, I've just sort of loved it. I've gone through several different operators, predominantly in the UK. Currently now sit with Elipse Entertainment. We hold a license in Ontario. And yeah, no, just sort of loving the life at the moment.
Wonderful. It's interesting what you say. How important is to be on customer support. To know the customers and all that. And it
Mm,
just gave me a little bit of a flashback because I remember on the first company that I worked for, uh, Marathon Bet. Uh, you know anyone that was joining the company, didn't matter if it was like head of whatever, will spend a week, in customer support. Good like basic training, with my
mm,
team, we'll do calls, and it was super, super helpful, to understand, how things work, and it's amazing, how things have changed. Like there's some people, work in the industry and they never talk to a player.
Do you know what? And I think it's a real shame because I think if you don't get that opportunity and you don't get that skill set, you're missing out. Like I'm a huge believer that when it comes to safer gambling, it's not just like an add-on product that you stick in a corridor or anything like that. It's part of the user's experience. It's a conversation that you can have with them. It's a product that's involved. So yeah, I think if you're coming into the industry, if you're coming into this sort of role and you haven't dealt with players or spoken to a player, I believe you may find it really, really difficult to get into that mindset of how it is that you're going to help them.
Hmm. Did you gamble before, working in the industry?
No, honestly, Pedro, and I say it a lot. The only thing I gamble with is my wife's patience, and I lose on a daily basis. I lose that gamble.
Okay.
But do you know what? It never to me. It never appealed to me. Like scratch cards here and there, do the old lottery here and there. I've signed up, I've played just out of interest, but I've never been an avid social gambler or anything like that. I get bored with it, if I'm honest with you. And for me, all my money goes towards other forms of entertainment, whether it be the streaming channels or the fast food industry is where it goes. That's my vice.
Okay. Okay. It's interesting because I remember when I started in the industry, because I never gamble, like
Mm,
placing a proper bet. I have played like, I mean, lottery is gambling, but I put like Euro Millions, some time or whatever. But before working in the industry, I never went into a bookie shop. I never played,
Mm,
and I remember I said, okay, I need to learn this stuff, and I put myself, I think it was a weekly budget, to say, okay, I'm going to gamble like 10
safe,
quid
smart.
10 quid a week, so maybe I'll get into it. But, I was a terrible gambler, like, okay, I never win anything, so after 4 or 5 weeks, it's like,
Mm,
oh, this is not my thing, I didn't particularly enjoy it, it was something that,
yeah,
I do enjoy, dealing with people, like the whole
yeah.
bustle of the industry. But I was a bit like, like I always have been, very clear to me that the house always have a bit of an edge, so you're
Mm.
unlikely to win.
Yeah, do you know what? I don't know if it's like because obviously being within the industry now for so long and having to speak to gamblers, and unfortunately, I've had many a difficult conversations with players as well. Whether that's just sort of kind of continued that putting me off, I don't know. But like I was in Gibraltar at the start of the start of this month, the end of April, for the Ethical Gambling Forum,
Mhm.
and we found ourselves in Gibraltar's land-based casino. I'm to be honest with you, I only went in there for a drink, but the whole environment and everything, like for me, it genuinely, it just, it's not for me personally. I can see why, and I can see why it is a form of entertainment. It's why we're here. It's why we're joy. But like land-based casino is well, yeah, it's definitely not something I can see myself sitting in
Mm.
on a night out. So it's different people have different things,
Uh,
different pleasures, don't they?
Okay, yeah, you're right. Why do you think like drives someone to really enjoy? I don't know, like a brick and mortar casino, like say, oh, let's go to a casino, let's play from
Do you
there.
know? I think for some people they enjoy it because of that atmosphere. Like for me, uh, I'm a dad of three. I get overstimulated way too easily. All right. But for some, they enjoy that atmosphere of you got the noises and the slots in the background, people having a great time, and all the lights and all the different sort of animations and the visuals. You know what that potentially could be someone's cup of tea, something that they really really enjoy, like how I very much really enjoy a good TV series or a good movie for its visual aspects or its things like that. Um, I think that's what potentially draws people in is what they're getting from it.
It's funny because I asked once, a director of again, one of the first company I worked for, because we were in, I think it was the Hypodrome, like in
Oh yeah,
was like ice, and then there was like a party or something, and I was all Alistair, I don't really understand. I said Pedro, because the guy was Scottish. Everybody wants to feel like James Bond from time to time, and
don't
I,
do a Scottish accent. Don't
yeah,
don't do a Scottish.
yeah, no,
Stop.
Duncan is going to stop me.
Exactly.
Yeah, but it was funny, because I do see the appeal, going there, having a drink,
Hmm,
but yeah, I suppose it depends on the person. So like everyone
hmm.
got their own sources of enjoyment.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I think for me, it's one of those ones where, with gambling in general, it it is that entertainment value. Is a game that they're paying to play, and they're getting enjoyment out of. Like with the 2p machines, go down to the seaside. I absolutely love a 2p machine. You just throw away your spare dosh that you got, and you may get like a real cheap diamond, which probably costs far less than what you put in, but it's just fun, and the kids love it. The kids love to watch it. Obviously, it doesn't really, kids don't really come into it when it comes to online gambling, but it's that entertainment value, and unfortunately, some people lose sight of that, and they think of it as a way to make money. So it's an income stream, and it's not the mindset to have. You want to go in there, and you just want to enjoy yourself, enjoy the slots, enjoy the bingo, enjoy the live casino.
Mm.
whatever it is you're doing. Same like with a mobile phone in the games you've got on the phone. You sit there and you play and you kill a couple of hours because you got it to kill.
Mm. You mentioned the sort of seaside arcades, and kids, but it's not even that. Like every child has a PlayStation or a
Hmm.
Switch or whatever. I think maybe probably dads, that we're a bit like hypersensitive to gambling and safer gambling and all of that. Sometimes you see some mechanics and say, oh, this is a bit borderline. I don't feel comfortable with that. So
Mm.
sometimes there's an ultra focus on online casino. And again, I've worked for many years, and there were not that many cases. When you find a minor playing, it's a you know it's rare. And then when you get the stats from research, and you say, okay, doesn't add on, and I truly believe that this when kids they ask, okay, do you gamble? Yes, it's because
Mm.
okay, probably the mechanics that you go in video games, and all that, they're aware, that they are gambling like, that always have been my sort of hypothesis. What do you think? What's your thought about this sort of stats of young people gambling? What's your experience working in the industry? Have you seen
Oof.
many cases of underage? You
Do you
know.
know what? I'm trying to think. I could probably count them on my first hand with the amount of cases that I've dealt with. I don't come across a lot of it, though. I suppose with the operators that I work with, they are sort of small tier operators at this moment in time, so maybe not as well known to sort of the public and the younger generation. But I think unfortunately, like these days, with how technology and gameplay is growing, um, I think kids get hooked on quite quickly. If I think back to the time where I used to play FIFA, and you play in your ultimate clubs and you want a specific player, and you don't get them, and so what do? You go, you buy whatever it is, whatever the in-game currency was, until you get that player. But at no point during that time, when I think back to it, was there ever prompts about how much money was being put into it, or what actually the likelihood of me getting a player was. All I cared about sort of 15, 16 years old was like I wanted that player, and I'm going to get that player no matter what. um, and I think if they don't learn that early on, the rules behind it, the likelihood, the odds, what that actually means, that it is a form of gambling, they could then go on into adult life, maybe accidentally step foot into a casino and say, well, that guy's winning. I want to win. And then start putting the money in and then going from there. And it just becomes a bit of a vicious cycle.
Mhm. So do you think that just or you cannot answer? Do you think that because for me it's pretty clear that okay, may not be the you know regulator definition of gambling, but for me that sounds pretty much like gambling. Okay, you
Mm,
want a FIFA players, you buy like FIFA currency credits or whatever, you know open a pack, get
mm.
this, or you don't may not know the odds, your friend got something, you may think
Yeah.
that you
I think for me, because I know a lot of people argue with the semantics of like, well,
yeah.
they don't get any actual currency or money back. And I know that's a lot of people's argument
Mm,
for, it's not gambling because they don't actually get any money back. And I was like, well, that's not. To me, when you gamble, you are paying to try and get something, and it's not guaranteed that you're going to get it. So
mm,
that's why, to me, it's a gamble. So when you got the
mm,
things like with the FIFA and trying to get your players, or your gun skins or your player skins and things like that, there is never a guarantee that you are going to get the specific skin that you want, that you're looking for. You don't get to pick and choose. There is a shop for some of
mm,
these games. Of course, that's different. That's just buying and purchasing. But if you're just opening a pack, hoping to get something, anticipating to get something, and then you don't get it, and then you go back and try and do it again. The worst ones is there are some games that have those wheels where like it shows you what you can win and what you can't win, and then when
I,
you just miss out on the one you want to get, it's like that's just Wheel of Fortune. That is just Wheel of Fortune, and that is just gambling right there.
that's a bit of a near miss, or
Exactly,
a bit like, oh,
exactly, yeah.
like it's a bit like that's yeah, I think sometimes see, I have even seen this like on online shops. You go there, and you got like a wheel. Oh, you got a present, or you got a discount. Like, oh man, I don't like this. I feel a bit like, I think if somebody goes for gambling, needs to be an adult, needs to know, where they're getting into, and it's fine. Nothing
Mm.
against it, but sometimes I just feel a bit like, ooh, gamification. It can be a bit, borderline, and sometimes, you mentioned that you're a dad. It's also something that was very interesting to me, because I'm a dad too. Is like, remember a SpongeBob movie, where SpongeBob goes to Atlantic City looking for his snail or something. Have you watched that one?
I, I can't, off the top of my head, I can't say I have.
so so basically, it's a Netflix. I think like Bob Sponge, SquarePants, and Patrick, they go in an adventure, and then end up in you know Atlantic City and the water thing, and they're just gambling, going a bit nuts, and say, oh, it's this sort of thing, that when you work in this, is, oh, I'm not sure that I feel comfortable with,
Mm.
like, you know but you know playing, and all this sort of thing. But hey ho. um I wanted to ask you, because you said that you have to deal with a lot of cases. Is there any particular one that stuck with you, that was like, oof, that one? Because I have a few ones, that don't not going to remember. I mean, I'm not going to forget those players.
I mean, for minors, no. Like I say, unfortunately, I say fortunately, actually,
Not
I can
not
count on the number of hands how many I've dealt
adults.
with. But
Adults, I mean, yeah.
adults, where to start? Unfortunately, I've had people who round about Christmas time, because of course, when it comes to Christmas time, there's always a little bit of spike here and there. People trying to potentially get more money for their kids. And I remember I was speaking to one guy on the phone because I just noticed everything just increased. The time he was on there, his deposits, his bets, you name it, everything had just increased. And I was like, let's get him on the phone. It's while I was on the UK market. And he started demanding that we give his deposits back because he's like, it's not even actually my money. It's the kids. It's money we set aside for the kids' presents for Christmas, and so I need that. Thanks. And I'm like, it's not. It's not how that works. Like, unfortunately, once it's gambled, it's gone. You can withdraw what's in the balance, but we can't do anything else. And he started trying to get his kids on the phone, yelling, saying like, "You go and tell him why he can't have a Christmas present," and things like that. And I'm like, I'm not going to speak to you. And he was trying to put his kids on the phone, and I'm like, I'm going to end the call. Like, I'm not here to talk to anyone's children. Like, I apologize that whatever impact that this has caused, but you've made the decision to input the money into the account and gamble with that. No one forced you to do that, and that's where it ends. Like, I'm not going to start justifying it to kids. Unfortunately, that's your role as a parent. That one stuck out. That was a very early on one for me because I was just like, that to me was mental at the time.
I mean,
Um,
it's tough. The calls. For me,
mm,
it's a time that I really dreaded work-wise, like Christmas, because you get like really gnarly
you
cases.
do,
Like,
you do. You
uh,
do, and unfortunately, a lot of them always at some like there is a good percentage that relate to sort of money that's kind of set aside for presents and things like that, and how it's sort of destroying families and lives. And you feel bad, as a parent. I feel bad. I don't want any kid to suffer. Christmas is a magical thing. I love Christmas. I've always loved Christmas. My girls love Christmas. But it's that like drawing that fine line where the responsibility ends, and like at what point is is it our fault? Is it their fault? Like that's why I'm such a huge firm believer of if we embed safer gambling into the product, and if we educate the players through the get go and not just when they're experiencing harm, and then it becomes a bit of a collaborative effort, where we're sort of prompting the players to make those sustainable decisions and those long term beneficial decisions, which then help us as operators to have that longevity of a relationship.
It's really it's really tough, because I was thinking about that case, that you were telling about, and it's like, it's so tough when you get this sort of situations, and you know it's
Mm,
this sort of thing, sometimes I feel okay, I'm just going to check the account to see if there was something that we could have picked up
mm,
earlier, if there's any sort of chance, to advocate, for the customer. Sometimes it's really difficult. Sometimes, there's no big flag, but maybe the 300 euros that or pounds that they have lost, is what they have for presents. It's, all the times you can see, okay, maybe we should have stopped this player, some time
mm,
ago, and you put the case and you try to, you know, uh, put together a goodwill gesture or whatever. Sometimes it's like you don't even know if this is going to be a bit of a repeat. You don't know if,
mm.
okay, this person is going to, vulnerable person is going to get the money, going to try to play somewhere else, and then try again. So it's a tough role, that you're there as a, the person on top of safer gambling. Yeah.
Yeah, but do you know what? I think it's what I really like the fact that in the 7 8 odd years, the way that we sort of educate our own employees when it comes to safer gambling. Like when I joined the industry 8 odd years ago, like literally, like it there was barely no time spent on responsible gambling. So for me coming in as a sort of 22-year-old, and I'm of the mindset of, well, it is just a game. What's the problem? I never understood the concept of like a problem gambler or like a gambling addiction or anything like that. I was really naive to begin with when I was in customer service. And I think what flipped the switch for me was unfortunately a difficult conversation that I had very, very early doors when I was on a night shift, and this guy was talking to me, and like all of a sudden, I thought we were just having a general chat. Just he wanted a bonus, and the tone shifted, everything shifted, and this grown man just started crying on the phone, and he started breaking down, and he started making comments that were concerning. Obviously, had to get sort of authorities involved for welfare checks and things like that. And it wasn't until after this interaction that it then hit me of the actual impacts that gambling can have on the vulnerable and those that are, prone to addiction, or those that have potentially things that sort of factor into gambling addictions. A lot of people say they use gambling as escapism from alcoholism or mental health issues or anything like that, and it all clicked into place from that one interaction that I had. And I'm glad that nowadays, when we go through onboarding new staff, there is more emphasis on responsible gambling. There's more thought put into it, which is great. I love that.
Hmm. It's not easy not to listen to a human being. When
Mm,
they're crying. They're in a really tough tough situation.
mm.
Uh, from your experience and all your years. Why do you think that someone you know why people are more vulnerable? Why people develop a bit of a problematic relationship with gambling?
Do you know what? It's relative to the person. I don't think there's just one top reason as to
Yeah.
why someone sort of is prone to sort of problem gambling behaviors. There are a variety of things that can sort of factor in there, whether it be, mental health cases where they're just trying to escape from their own thoughts, or, whether it is a case of, alcohol addiction, drug addiction, and they go hand in hand because, of course, their thought process is compromised at that point because they're high or they're drunk, or maybe again on the concept of high, trying to chase those highs via the wins that they've got. Some people do it because they genuinely think that it is a way for them to gain income. They think that there is a system, there is a rule that if they follow, that they will get it, and that's why they will chase and they will chase and they will spend and they'll spend. It's many reasons. I think the main reason probably is a form of escapism.
You touch into something, that there's a system. Do you ever get any friends, when they hear that you work in the gambling industry, they ask you, oh, is there a way to win?
Funny enough, no, I haven't. It's quite funny because one of my good mates, I actually met up with him yesterday, and he used to be a really avid gambler, way long before I joined the industry. Like from the time that he was 18, probably to sort of 25, he was he was a bookie. Like he loved to go into the bookies, and when I think back to it, and I can see it, all the different signs where I'm just kind of like, actually, potentially there may have been an underlining problem there. I mean, luckily he doesn't do it now, but it's crazy when you have the knowledge that you have and you sort of think retrospectively on events. And you're like, well, actually, that's quite naive of me to think that he was just being him, when in actual fact, maybe it was a case of he was going in there for a reason. Was it chasing a win? Was it escapism? What was it that he was trying to do? It's mental.
How do you train your staff? Do you have like a program?
So we use various ongoing training methods. So a lot of the training that we do is developed in-house by myself, delivered by myself. I'll then use them to feed back anonymously how they feel the training has gone. So a lot of the time it is done virtually, as our support staff are based in Cape Town. And it is, for me, I think it's as interactive as it can be to get them engaged into the topic. I think is the best way for someone to learn. For our onboarding staff, we do have an e-learning module that they run through, that they have to run through before they're allowed to touch any of the systems. That was actually developed by the RGC for us. But yeah, so everything else is sort of designed and developed in-house. So I'm constantly learning and adapting to what's best suited for the team that I'm going to train, because of course everyone learns differently, and I want to make sure that I try and cater to everyone's needs. But yeah, generally it's interactive training.
What would you recommend? Because I think probably the audience that we have here, that we aim is people, that they're in the sort of safer gambling scene, to another, head of safer gambling, that may be a bit more junior. Okay, what the best way to learn, to, like, I don't know, book, podcast, going to conferences, doing, different trainings. What would you recommend to, newer, safer gambling managers, head of safer gambling,
So the first thing would be sort of work out what is your learning style. How is it that you best learn? Like for me, I love a podcast. There are good podcasts out there. I love a panel. I love a webinar. There are those that do just like to be given a text, a book, a pamphlet, or a process document and learning through that. There are those that prefer the audio method. Stick on an audio book while you work, get that information going. So the first road would be find out what works best for you, and then don't be afraid to go out there and ask, talk about it. It's like when you mentioned you were doing your podcast, straight away I'm like, sign me up.
Yeah.
sign me up, like, because I have absolutely no shame when it comes to my own personal growth, my own knowledge growth, like anything I can do to make me better at my role, I am 100% there. So I feel like a lot of people, you know, they need to recognize that just because you don't know something or you may not know the best way to do it, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're terrible at your job. It just means you haven't got there yet.
Yeah, and we need to learn from each other.
Yeah.
I remember the first time that I think that I contact Mark Griffith. I think it was in 2014 or something.
Mm,
And I sent him an email. Asking, because I was back then really interested on safer gambling and all of that. So is there a master's on responsible gambling, or behavioral addictions or
mm,
something. It was not that I know, and that was it.
mm.
So it's yeah, it's a shame that there's nothing really comprehensive, you know out there, at a bit of a deeper deeper level. That's something that
Mm.
I always wanted you know to develop, like, okay,
Yeah.
like a you know PG diploma or something like this,
Mm.
have all, people, contributing, different experts, I think that I'll be
Yeah.
I'll be pretty cool. But hey ho,
You never know.
never know,
You
never
never know. You never know.
know. Can do the online safer gambling university.
Exactly. There you go. You've already got it sorted.
uh,
Like,
we'll we'll see. Um, I wanted to ask you, because what do you think about artificial intelligence, and safer gambling? Do you think that we're going to be all, replaced by bots at some point?
I mean, at some point, we probably, we will be some point, but I don't think, I think that is generations down the line. If you think about how obviously the infancy of where we are, it was actually quite interesting. This came up when I was at the Gaming Leaders Summit last week. One of the panel members were talking about using AI chatbots for SE return interactions.
Mhm.
And I'll be honest with you, personally speaking, I don't like the idea of it. I don't like the idea of AI doing the interaction with the players. I think AI is a great tool, or machine learning in this instance is a great tool to use to get all the information that you need and put it in a nice holistic view that's easy for someone to read. But when it comes to a decision making, when it comes to an interaction, I think I genuinely cannot see AI taking over anytime soon in regards to that, because I think there's a lot that you need that at the moment AI just does not have.
It's an interesting topic, because
It
okay,
is.
what if you use an AI to try to cheat another AI? So if you're
Mm,
a player, and you have to have an interaction, you could sort of have another artificial intelligence. Okay, they have this artificial intelligence that is going to assess me. Can you
mm,
help me to,
yeah.
you know
Yeah, 100%. It's an absolute it's a strange one, and it's a topic that I've been thinking about a lot more and more. Really, is obviously AI's role in safer gambling and customer interactions as well. I think for generalized chats, you can use a chatbot quite easy. Pick on keywords and take them to certain points and certain knowledge, but things like those sort of interactions, like a threat of harm interaction, like imagine you are in the most highest emotional state possible, where you are willing to do something unthinkable, and you can't come back from it, and you are speaking to HAL 3000. Like,
yeah,
it
I mean,
just
I don't know. I mean, I think probably you got like the executive or whatever, that probably they are apprehensive in case of,
mm,
you get, like, I don't know, like, and yeah, I go in rogue. Somebody say, "Oh, I got a method, and I'm going to okay, yeah, continue with your method." It seems sound, or
Yeah.
something
No,
like
do
this.
you know what? Turns around, as actually no, your method is wrong. Here's the correct answer.
Yeah.
Like,
Okay, or something. Because I remember in a company that I work for, they have like a chatbot. And then
mm,
if they mention there were some key words, that will sort of trigger, an agent if it was online, and if not, an email. Bit of yeah, but I also think, okay, I get quite annoyed, when I need to do some, you know things through customer support, and you get the bot straight away. It's like, no, I want to speak with a person.
mm. Yeah, I think in the world of safer gambling interactions, I don't think AI belongs. You can use it obviously as a tool to help
Mm.
you better your interaction and pick
Yeah,
on keywords and things like that. But an actual start to finish conversation with an AI, just don't see it happening anytime soon.
yeah,
Not effectively anyway.
to crunch the data, perhaps, to say,
Yeah.
okay, got the 6 month, is there any trends? Can you tell me the flags so I can do a better
Yeah.
interaction, or something like that? What should we focus? What was reasonable with the information that we got about their affordability? What sort of
Mm,
limits should I suggest? Yeah, okay.
yeah.
In terms of, you know, treatment, what sort of organization do you normally refer people to? When you feel that
Yeah.
someone is a bit in
Um
a difficult
well,
situation.
So as mentioned, the operator Elipse, we run High Flyer, and we are in Ontario.
Mhm.
So part of the AGCO regulations is that one of the top that we always comment on if someone ever mentions that they have an addiction or a gambling problem is Connex Ontario.
Mhm.
So Connex Ontario, they deal with all varieties of addiction, drug addiction, alcohol addiction, mental health. Concerns, as well as gambling addiction as well. So I'd say that is probably the main one that we deal with. But not to toot your horn or anything, Pedro, but we do have BetBlocker's RG directory on our website as well. So with that being geolocated, players can find out specifically, where's good in their area, in their jurisdiction, to have those sort of conversations, whether it be a treatment provider, or a financial advisor or anything like that. So I've actually found that really, really useful to use because although we mainly operate in Ontario, we do have an ordinary license just
Mm.
to operate in the provinces around. Weirdly, we have a bit of a New Zealand player base, but of
Mm.
course that's a completely different kettle of fish to the Canadian style. So it helps us easier when it comes to where to sort of promote. So player
Mm.
says something, where are they? Okay, cool. Let's go down this route.
What what do you think? Because, for example, you mentioned, that we know each other. We're friends. We talk at different conferences. We'll chat from time to time. Uh, this sort of apprehension, that the industry, have grip on the charity sector and all of this, and with that raising suspicions. What are your views on this sort of, okay, should the industry talk with the third sector? Should it be like, you know, more boundaries? We shouldn't be talking to each other.
No, do you know what? Like, I'm a huge believer of collaboration. I think the only way for us to better the processes to help the players and help each other is collaboration. So I don't think that the operators in the third sector should be segregated in any way, shape, or form. I think there should be open communication, just like how I think there should be open communication between operators and regulators to work out like the different standards and regulations that are in place. Like yeah, a collaborative effort is definitely the way forwards.
Yeah, because in the last couple of years, it feels a bit like, okay, like the industry had a black hand, like into the, treatment, prevention, I just feel a bit like, okay, you know, I mean, firstly, that most of the people that they work in safer gambling, you know, they have a very limited, power, like in the company.
Mm,
It's not like you're the CEO or, or anything like that. And it's the people that we normally have more contact with. So it's not like, going to exert any type of unreasonable influence, because we have a talk about something.
mm.
Anyway, I wanted to ask you, do you have you seen difference because you talk okay the Canadian market, but you also have work in the UK. So
Mhm.
what's the main sort of difference, in terms of I don't know, like gambling literacy or risk appetite or
So I think with the Ontario license, they are a lot more prescriptive in what they want from you, especially from an RG point of view as well. On the UK side, you've got your LCCPs and everything, but I still will always say that the UK side of things is always there's a touch of vagueness
mm,
on what it is that they exactly want from you, and let's be honest, you don't really hear a lot of best practice. You only really learn from other people's mistakes that are being fined within that market. Whereas, on the Ontario side, they collaborate with the Responsible Gambling Council. So part of the regulation is that within 2 years of getting your license, you need to pass an accreditation with the RGC, which is purely based on responsible gambling, and they have a list of standards and criteria to run through. And on their website, you can see the criteria and the standards. So it's not as if you're hit in the dark about what it is you need to do. You know what it is that you need to do to stay in that market and what is expected of you. And I love that. And what's more is that with the Ontario side of things, is that they have operator forums on a quarterly basis where they'll invite all of the operators, sit down virtually to talk about a specific standard. What's the clarity of the standard? Are we on the same page? Does it need to be amended? Does it need to be clearer? And they take all of that on board before they start making changes. So it's not a case of, hey, we're making this change. What are your thoughts? The AGCO and IGO, they get you involved in that process, and then they'll go away, they'll listen, and then they'll feed back, and they're like, okay, well, based on that, this is the proposed changes that we're thinking. What are your thoughts?
mm,
Again, it's a lot of collaboration, and I love that because then it feels like you're not being policed, so to say. That you get a say, you get to actually, you know, have a voice in what it is that's going on around you, which is good.
it's interesting because sometimes when you get a consultation, you feel a bit okay. It feels a bit sometimes okay. The decision have been made, but they're doing the consultation a bit like to let it legitimize, whatever
Mm,
is coming. You just say okay, and
mm,
sometimes that's some, my feeling is be like okay, that some, you know, yeah, I don't know, I would like maybe something in some markets a bit more that it feels a bit more collaborative rather than okay, this is
yeah,
a checkbox for good practice that
yeah,
we do a consultation, but we're going ahead with this. Things, what feels most of the time in some markets. Well, the Ontario sounds quite interesting in the sense that it's prescriptive. Okay, that, and particularly for safer gambling, you know, teams and for compliance specialists is easier in the sense okay, this is fine, this is not fine. Well, sometimes if you're like okay, what speed can I go in this road? Okay, a
mm,
speed that is safe. Okay, okay, you don't know that wasn't safe until you crash. Sometimes
mm,
and it leaves open maybe the door for when you have a bit more of a financially driven company, that they may
Mm,
have a bigger appetite for risk. So we're making, a risk based, or we're taking a risk based approach, and we're comfortable with this high level of risk.
mm.
Cool. Um, okay, what are your main sort of sources of uh, inspirations in the gambling industry? What are people that you say, okay, I learned a lot from uh, Griffiths, or from this other person,
Oh,
I mean, doesn't need to be gambling, like
oh.
Gabor Mate, everybody say, it's really good in addictions in general, and
Mm.
I really like his books. So
Yeah, so I mean, for me, I get a lot of inspiration from the network that are around me. I think I'm very fortunate that the people that I collaborate with are very like-minded, in the sense of like compliance as a whole is not just like a black hole where commercial goes to die. That whole mindset of that, if you put compliance in at the start and you work collaboratively with compliance, can make a difference. So, I can't pinpoint down to, specific one person that I get inspiration from, because there is literally like anyone on my network I
mm,
get inspiration from. One person that sort of comes to mind that I'm talking to at the moment over in Canada is Dr. Mary Donahue from the
mhm,
Digital Wellness Centre. And the thing that I love about Mary is the fact of bringing the whole psychology and the science into it. And what she's doing is she's developing ways for us to provide players with tools to protect themselves while keeping them engaged
mm,
in the site still. So, like a lot of the RG tools that we've got at the moment are sort of like stop, block, restrict situation. Whereas the things that they're developing on, like with the MyStride app, if you've seen it, is it keeps the player engaged, micro breaks, regulate the brain, and let them carry on. So they can play for longer, but they can play safer, because that's just a commercial gold mine, isn't it? If you
mm,
can get players to stay on the site, but also play responsibly for longer, it's an absolute win-win. So I do actually I get a lot of inspiration from that.
mm. Okay, so anything that we haven't touched on, and you like to talk about, anything that we say, oh, that's really interesting, and
Ah, I mean, we could probably talk for hours.
yeah, no, I know.
That's the actual great thing. But no, I mean, I suppose if we're trying to keep it on the subject of like with sort of safer gambling and things like that, um, I think for anyone out there, it's always a case of you can always think that you have the best product or the best
Mm,
team or the best processes or the best training, but if you're not regularly evaluating what you've got, if you're not getting the feedback
mm,
from the people involved, then you're doing yourself an absolute disservice, really, aren't you? But other than that, no, I don't know if there's anything else to sort of
to dig in.
touch on.
Uh, you
Yeah.
know,
No.
you know, do you use any sort of uh, I don't know, like insights from expert by experience, or like or maybe from conference and stuff, like your epics, deal me out,
Oh,
let me
right.
know
So yeah,
more.
like lived experience. Do you know what? At the moment, it's not something that we've touched on. It's something that I'm interested in,
Hmm.
because I think there is a lot of benefit behind it. But it's not something that I've actually myself touched up on. I think like everything, it's not a silver bullet. All disrespect, no, all respect to the likes of like Epic and Deal Me Out. I feel like using them collaboratively with other training methods and other tools you could build yourself a fantastic safer gambling team with that
Mm.
knowledge. I think getting getting that information from people that have had that experience is it definitely has those benefits on there, which is great, and I love that. Um, yeah, I've just not been fortunate enough to sort of bring them on board with the companies that I've worked for.
I mean, sometimes, you can sort of, pass the information. You go to a conference, or to an event, you listen to the story, and bring it up. Sometimes, you got like, you know, podcasts or YouTube videos where
Mm.
there's, different people that they talk about the story. So it can be also a good way, to bring it.
Yeah, could it? Do you know what? I feel like for me, I'd do it a disservice if I was trying to tell someone else's story.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd a massive disservice towards it if I'm honest. Like if it's not an experience that I wouldn't be able to have that emotion behind it because for me, yeah, it's a completely different kettle of fish. I've been fortunate enough that I haven't had to experience something like that. So yeah, I just feel weird if I tried to like tell someone else's story.
I find, particularly with people that I work with in safer gambling, sometimes like team members, that have, oh, my dad had problem with gambling, or my brother, had a problem with substances. Sometimes people that they're driven to work in this area, they're helpers.
Mm. No, I'd say, and that's the thing. Like for me, I mean, none of my family gamble.
Mm,
Um, like it's a weird one where for me, I fell into the industry. I used before previously I was in insurance and I worked in a call center, and I thought that's it. That's where I was gonna grow
mm,
professionally. Yeah, that was where my life was. But due to events in the call center moving, and they made everyone redundant. And at the same time, the company that I entered into the industry with was opening a an office in Norwich, and it was just sheer luck, sheer turn of events that I turned out where I am. And do you know what? I am so grateful for it.
you
Um,
know,
but yeah, like it's never been a case of like, you know what, I used to watch my dad gamble instead of play with me, or my brother would steal or anything like that. Like I've never had that. I mean, my brother's a not going to say it. We're on a podcast, but like yeah, like I'm not, I've never experienced it from like a personal point of view.
it's really funny because my story is very similar. I used to work for, you know, IBM. We were, I was in charge of the help desk for Amex, and they moved the help desk from Brighton to Poland. And I just applied for random jobs, and I ended up getting a job in a gambling company. As managing customer operations. So
Mm,
it's a bit random. Like how do you end up working here in general for most of the people. The people that they're very driven, they like gambling, they wanted to work there, but yeah. So thank you very much for being here today.
no, thank
Amazing,
you.
to share this conversation with you. Thanks a lot.
No, I love it. No, thank you for having me. I appreciate it, Pedro. It's great.
Awesome. I'm ending